hey, welcome to another episode of the CY Pod, the Crossway Youth Podcast. Thanks for listening. If you've been listening for the first few episodes, we hope that today's a good chat. I'm here with Lachie. How are you, Lachie?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm well,
How
thank
are you?
you. That was to YouTube, just
That
for our
was to-
audio listeners.
Well, and Spotify. You can watch it on Spotify.
So to YouTube and Spotify, hello. And that unknown voice that just came through is Kia. We're here with Kia.
Hello, I'm Kia.
And we've got Joash here as well.
How we going?
Hi, Joash.
How are you guys? Doing well?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Pretty good, yeah.
Pretty solid day so far?
Yeah.
Pretty sleepy day.
Yeah. It's not bad. Pretty uneventful.
Yeah?
My day started like 2 hours ago, so it's been pretty good.
It is not 8 a.m. in the morning. Just letting everyone know. Read into that what you will.
Very well afternoon.
Guys, we're going to have a quick chat today, and we're excited to. Well, I don't want to speak too much into it because this is kind of your guys' thing. But there's been some cool things happening here at our ministry, Crossway Youth, Crossway Baptist Church in Melbourne, Australia, and you guys were part of leading something that we did. How many months ago was it now? Probably a couple of months ago.
It was.
like
It was
one.
in June.
One?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was July.
It was in July.
Okay,
July, yeah.
it was sometime
8th
in
till 10th, right?
sometime in July,
Yeah,
just
something like
after.
that. Yeah.
About a month ago.
So we run a winter camp, which is kind of like our youth ministry camp in the middle of the year. We all go away for 5 days down to Phillip Island. It's pretty chilly, and there's a lot of like spiritual atmosphere that we have after that amongst the people. And you guys felt like there was an opportunity to capitalize on that and just responding to some things that God was saying. And so what happened? What was it? Would you say the 8th of July, something like that? Yeah, tell us a bit about what happened and why we're here today.
Yeah. I would say like after, again, the winter camp, me and Kia have the privilege of being leaders on that camp for our youth. So after winter camp, we really felt a strong like spiritual urge to sort of continue what sort of God started doing at winter camp. So we felt the urge to sort of continue and bring that on. It actually started off as a joke among a youth, a small part of the youth band where we're just we sort of made the joke of like, oh, we should just sleep over at church and like just worship for like overnight. And for some reason, when I drove back after that comment was made, I drove back home that night, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm like, oh, 24 hours. And Kia wasn't actually a part of this conversation. He was where were you Saturday night?
I just wasn't on band. I think it was like amongst the band that was on for the service that night, and I wasn't on band that day. So
Yeah, true. Okay,
I
so
was
there's
just
unlucky.
elsewhere. Yeah, I was just
He was
somewhere.
chilling.
I was existing.
Everyone was pretty
somewhere
tired
else.
after camp. You're probably sleeping, weren't you? Yeah.
Do you guys end up getting sick and stuff?
Oh, yeah. I was super sick that weekend, yeah.
Yeah, always. Everyone gets sick after camp.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was actually all right. Last year, cooked, but this year I was all right.
Yeah,
Surprisingly, maybe I didn't go hard enough. I don't know.
No, I remember being kind of sick as well. Anyway, a quick
This is what you came here for.
quick medical break. No, I got back to my I remember going back into my driveway and just hanging out in the car, just listening to some worship music. And I just remember like I just needed to tell someone that I felt like this urge on my heart to actually maybe try do a 24-hour worship set. So for some reason, for unknown reasons, the first person I thought of was Kia. And I texted Kia, hey, we should do a 24-hour worship set. And do you remember what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, my reaction was, Joash, you won't believe this, but I have the exact same thought.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty much the day before, it was, we just came back from winter camp. And after that, I was just like in my room playing some worship music and stuff. And I had the thought, wow, we should do like 24-hour worship. Like that would actually be incredible. But I was like, okay, nah, that's way too crazy. Like that's never going to happen. Like, why would we do that? So dumb. Didn't tell anyone. And then, yeah, the following day in the evening, Joash texted me. So I was like, okay, so I haven't told anybody, but Joash has just texted me something that I thought about in my room.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? So I was just like, Joash, like, I've had the exact same thought. I can't remember my exact words, but it was like my mind was blown. My jaw hit the floor. And we started kind of like explaining
Because it's such a specific thing.
It was very
Yeah.
specific.
24 hours of
24
worship.
hours
It's
of
like a
worship.
very specific thing
Yeah.
that, like, you didn't talk to each other,
No.
and then all of a sudden you were just like, I thought this and I thought this, and you're
Yeah.
like, what the heck?
From
And then-
memory,
yeah.
I feel like your response wasn't quite as formal as, yes, Joash, I thought the same thing. Was it all caps type of...
It would have been like, yeah, no.
I'm
it
pretty sure
would've
the first word you said was, "Hey yo."
yeah, yo. It would have been like the text equivalent of shouting.
Yeah.
Because I think if you would have told me in person, that's what my response would have been. And yeah, so we started to kind of like explain to each other what like our thought kind of was, and it literally lined up like it was the exact same idea.
Mm.
And I think that's how we knew that it wasn't just like a random thought that our brain had just come up with. It was definitely a God thing. So
And I think it's like you could go straight to like the practicalities of it, right? Because in your brain, when God was saying that to both of you, you could both be like, nah, it's too hard because of this and
Yeah.
this and
Yeah.
this and
That's
this
exactly
and this.
what
And
I
it's
did as
too,
well,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
But like even before you get to that, maybe talk a little bit about, I guess, why do this. So like the Holy Spirit, you feel like the Holy Spirit's told you, he's spoken to both of you, so you're like, okay, it's definitely the Holy Spirit. What was some of your heart for it? Like what was some of your heart for the 24 hours? And then I guess kind of what was God stirring in you? What was he trying to cultivate in the community, do you think?
I think that over this last year, Josh and I both have the privilege of serving on youth band and band for also the young adults congregation here at Crossway. And I think over this year, we've had a big focus on like being spirit led in those spaces of worship. And I think a lot of the time when we're serving on band and things like that, we can be restricted by like time limitations and like service structures. And I think something that was on both of our hearts going into winter camp was not being bound by those sorts of things in worship. And I think there were multiple times where we kind of felt like the service or the worship set could have just kept going and kept going if we had the time. So I think even just like before we kind of had the thought of doing 24 hours, we were really wanting to have a space where we could just continue worshipping because, yeah, every time we would worship, we were like, we're not done. Like the only reason we're stopping is because we have to because people like parents are here to pick up their youth or
Or the
whatever
next service
it
is
is.
about to
Yeah,
start.
the next
Service
service
is about to
starting.
start. Pre-roll starts soon.
Yeah. So I think that was probably a big part in the lead up.
Yeah, as Kia said, like it's just a build up, really. It's a build up of many services that we both served on, and we just felt that maybe it was just ended a bit too soon due to the life we sort of live in. There's sort of like a structure to how services are, and we just felt like I think I can think of like 6 different times. Where we were on band and we're just like, oh man, worship was so powerful, and we felt like we just cut it a bit too short. So yeah, as Kia said, we just asked the question, what if? That's where it starts. Like, what if it didn't stop? And I think that sort of is what the core foundation of this whole 24-hour worship was, is what if? What does God have in store for us?
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful thing where we run church services and we have worship times in church services so that people can encounter God, so that people can worship God and express their worship to God, but it has 20 minutes attached to it because we have other things that we need to get to and other things that we need to do. And really you start to tap into this, this whole idea that you've heard in a bunch of settings potentially, that God comes where he's wanted. And there's something quite simple and beautiful about just wanting God and just
absolutely.
having a hunger for God. And you guys were able to like chat to a bunch of people, and we'll get into the logistics now, but like create a space where people can want God in whatever way they look, whatever they want it to look like as well. Yeah, man, tell us a bit about that 24-hour period, like from like, okay, we're doing this, like tell us maybe briefly, like what was that logistics like? Are you just like straight onto an Excel spreadsheet and just like, what do we do? And like, what were the next days of? Because
chain emails.
It turned around pretty quickly, didn't it? From like, this is a good idea to like, oh, we're doing this now.
Yeah, I think like from when Joash texted me to when it happened, it was less than a week.
Wow.
So
Sheesh.
it was massive turnaround. Like there was a lot. I mean, yeah, instantly our brains just went to like how, like where, how, who, like all of these questions. Yeah, we had big spreadsheet of like time slots to fill and stuff like that. I mean, what was going through your head, like when we like were like, yeah, this is happening? What were your first thoughts?
I think the first thing we were trying to figure out was when.
Yeah.
It was like when do we actually do this? We just come out of a 5-day youth camp. Everyone's exhausted, but we also want to make it available for the youth, and it also happened to be school holidays, that time as well. So I think we made the decision to push for the second week of school holidays. So I reckon, was it Thursday night?
It was the Thursday.
Thursday night, yeah.
We started so that was a when that we got. And then the where was another question, because we thought of maybe we could do it at someone's house, or maybe we can try book out the chapel, but I think in the end we came to the conclusion of doing it in Crossway's prayer room, and that's a sort of a new space that Crossway has made available for people to kind of book. It's a 24-hour prayer room, so they can kind of book it whenever they want, and it's an amazing space as well. You guys have been there before as well, yeah?
Yeah, man. It's available 24 hours, so you can kind of book it out whenever you want to.
Yeah.
Anyone in the congregation it's kind of through the 24/7 prayer movement. We started doing that earlier in the year, and it's a great space. And it's a really I reckon it's the best space that you guys could have gone to. It's like it feels like it's the space that you need to worship.
Yeah,
in, right?
like it's a super intentional space. Like I feel like doing someone's house, you kind of like, yeah, that's cool, but it's also very like casual in that way. This one was, you came in and you knew what was going on, and it was like really, you didn't come in going, all right, like what are we doing? I guess it was like we're coming in to worship and to pray, and that was like really obvious even just from where it was located.
And I mean, our number one criteria is somewhere that's accessible to everyone for 24 hours, and like people can come and go whenever they want over like 24 hours, which like there's not many spaces available for that. So I think we're very blessed to have access to that space as well, because like I think if that space wasn't available, we'd have struggled big time finding somewhere where
definitely
like it was safe, where people could just come and go.
So just to get real like practical for a second, 24 hours of prayer and worship. Did you guys fall asleep?
Didn't fall asleep while I was there. I
True.
did go home to sleep overnight for a bit, which actually very blessed that I got to do that as well, because for a while there it was looking like we'd be there for the whole 24 hours.
Yeah, that was my thing. So you rostered and you created a spreadsheet for people to be able to lock themselves in, but right up until quite close to it. And this is the way that you guys can talk about this in a minute, but I know this, like God's funny in the way that he provides and things like that. But right up until pretty close, you're looking at it being like, is this just
22 hours?
Is this just us being awake for 24 hours and that's it, right?
It did seem like that.
Yeah. I think across that week, one thing I really remember distinctively is basically I think it was we made the spreadsheet on the Monday, I'd like to say, and then we checked it on the Tuesday night.
Yeah, Tuesday night.
At 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. And I give Kia a call. I'm just like, all right, let's have a look.
In my memory, it was like 2 a.m. I don't know.
Yeah, could have been 2 a.m.
Yeah, it probably was.
That's 10 p.m. for Joash time.
Yeah, true. Yeah, after his afternoon nap. That's like midday. Yeah.
So I called Kia, and then we kind of looked at the spreadsheet, and we're just like, hopefully, because we were prepared going into this. We were prepared, if need be, me and Kia would just do the 24 hours.
Yeah.
Not sure how that would have looked like if we actually had to do it,
it
but
was easier in our minds.
It was a lot easier, But we look at the spreadsheet, and man, we looked at it, and we're just like, we had how many an 8-hour slot free? It
was overnight. There was a couple hours at the beginning, filled,
people did,
and then at the end, but the whole middle chunk.
Yeah. And I think our first response, I don't know, I think just the way our humor works is we just start laughing.
we genuinely, our one reaction was just sat there laughing hysterically over the phone. Because
I would not have been laughing, boys.
Oh, I think it was just a I'm in danger type laugh.
The Ralph Wiggum thing from Simpsons.
I'm in danger. Yeah.
But in saying that, like as you said, Sam, like I feel like God has his own sense of humor where he's just like, we found ourselves looking at the spreadsheet on Wednesday morning, 2 a.m. Looking at it, and we're just like, oh no. And then, man, God provides. God does provide in the end. And I think I remember saying that to you as well. I think I remember saying, don't worry, like God will provide. God will provide.
Yeah. After our hysterical laughing, we were like,
laugh.
okay, God wanted us to do this, so it's gonna work out.
Yeah.
And then we checked again, like Thursday before it started. Like this is day of as well, so we're just like, all right, let's have a look how long we're gonna have to do. And I'm like, genuinely, pretty much every spot was filled, like overnight, everything, which is crazy.
Amazing, yeah.
And I think the unique thing about this as well is we talked about the 24/7 prayer room and all that sort of stuff, but this was 24/7 worship. Like this was 24 hours of worship quite specifically. And so I remember it being big for you guys that it was going to be like unceasing worship the entire time as well. Because 24 hours of prayer is one thing, because you can pray quietly in silence, but like 24 hours of non-stop music is like, so like, what was the longest that someone played? You guys all played music at different points, right? What was the longest that you played for?
My longest was from about 10 a.m. to 12:30ish on the Friday morning. Yeah. I did do the night before as well, but I was kind of more doing little blocks here and there. I also went home and slept because that is valuable.
But that's 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours straight for me.
Were
was like solo me in the morning.
Were your just fingers numb?
Nah, not until after.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I think when you're in the moment, you guys could probably attest as well, even like, especially on guitar, but like when I was playing piano and stuff, you don't notice while you're worshipping.
Yeah.
2.5 hours later, someone else takes over on the keyboard and you get off and you're just like, oh.
You get off and your hands are still
like
playing
shaking.
keys just in midair with the keyboard there. Yeah.
Or you come off and you got the huge lines across your fingers from the guitar strings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I remember turning up at like 12 p.m. after Lachie had just played for like 2 hours on his own, and he was literally like head on the keyboard.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of
like he was still playing, but he was like resting his head on the keyboard, and I'm like, is this man playing in his sleep? Like, it's incredible.
Built different.
I was awake, guys. You didn't say 24 hours of awake. You just said 24 hours of
yeah,
worship.
so, yeah, you could do it however you want to, man.
God speaks to you in dreams.
Whatever. Yeah.
How long did you play for? Yeah.
Oh, I think I need to jog back from memory, but I'm pretty sure I might have had on the Friday. Was I on from 3 p.m.
You played
till all the way to the end?
Well, we both played from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m.
Yeah, you guys did that one.
So we did 3 hours then, but then you did 4 hours
on the Friday evening.
On the Friday evening.
2 till 6, right? Wait, when did we finish it? 8. We finished at 8.
8, yeah. You played 4 till 8, I think.
4 till 8, yeah.
Oh, but you probably, I reckon you played a bit before that as well.
Yeah.
But
so
then had a short break and then back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mac is run.
Yeah.
Sure, Mac is run.
I reckon you take the cake when it comes to who was playing for the longest, because that was crazy. That's absolute shift from you.
It doesn't feel like that though.
No.
Like honestly, like as Lachie said, like just in the moment when you're just worshipping, I think there's a real sense of like peace and calmness that I find I always feel that, and with that I think time just goes by really quick.
Yeah.
And then also saying that, like, I feel like I could if I were to do the same thing but not worshipping, like if I were to go start playing Justin Bieber tunes, I just feel like after half an hour my brain, my hands would just be like, all right, enough of this.
Enough of this.
But with worship, it's an unending thing, and I think the coolest part about it is we don't understand why. We don't understand why we don't feel tired. Like, we don't understand why our brains doesn't get tired. And yeah.
There's like I was in there for 2.5 hours on the Thursday night, and it felt like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it literally
Seriously.
just felt like 5 minutes, because you're there and you're praying and you're worshiping, and it's a relationship, right? Like you, in our humanly relationships, you're perfectly fine to quote unquote waste time with someone in a relationship, someone that you're close with, you want to spend time together, and you can sit and kind of just be doing nothing. And it's awesome because you're just in each other's company and in each other's presence.
Yeah.
And it's similar for worship, right? Like
100%.
it doesn't need to be structured every single moment for it to be an amazing experience. Like you're there and you're cultivating your relationship with God, and you are, quote unquote, wasting time on God. And we don't like to say, like, hey, you should waste time with God, because we go, well, no time with God is wasting time with God. But if you think about it, it's kind of like coming to God with that, hey, I don't really have an agenda or a plan here, but we're just going to spend 2 hours together and I'm just going to be with you. And that's really beautiful. And I think that was part of what, because you would have had more structured times over the 24 hours, but then also less structured times as well. Like you finished with a kind of like an encounter type service, right? Where it was like, hey, corporate worship, let's everyone come together. But then there was other times where it was just like Lachie falling asleep.
I wasn't asleep, guys.
Or Lachie and like, but like not much talking and just people encountering God's presence. And I think it's beautiful that both of those things are growing your relationship with God and worshiping Him. And neither of them is right or wrong. They're just different ways to do it, right?
Yeah. I think another beautiful thing we saw is because so many people were involved, there was so many different like styles of worship over the 24 hours. Like, couple hours we had like hymns, and then like obviously sometimes we just had a guitar, sometimes it was just keys, sometimes we had people on keys, guitar, box drums, singing,
full band
like,
basically.
Sometimes it was full band, sometimes there was just one person, and I think it was just incredible to be able to like witness all the different ways that people worship God. Like
100%.
worship doesn't look like one thing, and I think it's very easy to like
put it in a box.
Worship and be like, yeah, this is what worship is. Like we come into an auditorium, there's a stage, there's a band, there's lights. That's 100%. Worship. But I think like we definitely learnt, or at least it was like we saw it fresh with our own eyes, that worship can't be defined. It can look like so many things. That was really cool.
Yeah, even as you say that, I think of the new elevation. Oh, not new, but sort of a new song that's been done at Crossway called "Same God," and it's this idea of that, like, how God is the same for everyone and through the different generations. And as you said, it's cool to see the same God interact so differently with people. And just in one room, you have people that might feel like they need to be on their knees, worshiping. You have people that just read the Bible, and maybe you just have people that just sort of just, I'm all the people that just like sort of just sit there and just think, sort of stare blankly off into the distance, but
but there is something going on in his
brain.
Yeah,
there is something. Like there is, I promise you. Or sometimes it might just be just
exposed.
Yeah, and I think so. I guess if for those of us that are listening or watching as well, to kind of go like, oh, I feel like I have some of that same level of hunger for the presence of God or hunger for worship as well. What have you kind of noticed in either yourselves or in kind of the people who are involved afterwards? Like, what does doing something like that, what did it do for you guys in your relationship with God, or what's it done for the people that you've seen, or even kind of our ministry context here at Crossway? What change have you noticed in people or in yourselves since? Either of you can answer that first.
I think for me personally, it actually helped on my kind of journey of deciphering what is my thoughts and what is God's voice, and what is the Holy Spirit. Because I think on winter camp, just before we kind of started this process of planning and like running this 24-hour worship, that's when I really started to kind of be able to like tell my thoughts and God's voice apart, for the first time pretty much. And I think that like hearing this and hearing God's voice about the 24-hour worship and actually being obedient to it played a big part in that journey for me. And as like a ministry, as like a band and as a team, I also think it was massive because we've had a big focus this year on simplicity as a band, and just like stripping it back to basics and just seeing what worship really is at its core. And I think that, this 24-hour space was like a big part of that as well, because it was just in a room. Like we didn't really have a plan. It was short notice. But yeah, it's been, I think, a big kind of part of a culture shift that's happening.
Yeah, as Keith said, I think the idea of worshipping simply, which might look different for other people. Like for if you're a small church, worshipping simple might look like acoustic guitar and box drum. If you're a church like Crossway, simple might look like a full band on stage. And for us, simple for the 24-hour prayer was just keys, acoustic worship, and just singing as well. And I think the impact it sort of had on my journey with God, and also my journey with worship, is I'm sort of had this shift in mindset of worship being something of worship sort of having this massive impact, even when it's in simple form, if that makes sense. So sort of like drifting away from the idea that it needs to be really well produced and the production needs to be high quality. I think worship is it's a sort of your what's the word I'm thinking of? Your heart's...
It's your heart posture.
Posture,
right?
Thank you, yeah. It's a posture of your heart. I've sort of like brought that same mentality into a lot of my worship sets, and just trying to like put away the production, put away the lights, and put away chords and transitions and stuff, and just, okay, let's get the heart posture right first before we bring those stuff in, so we don't get caught up in it. Yeah.
Because it's an easy thing. I mean, if you've been in church circles at all for any length of time, you'll have heard this conversation come up to the surface again and again and again. It's not about the lights. It's not about the cameras. It's not about the production level. It's not about the transitions.
Times I've heard that.
Seriously, it's a cyclical thing, and I think there's a reason it's a cyclical thing. It's a very human, fallen, sinful thing to want to glorify that, right? Rather than glorifying God, you glorify the quality of the experience rather than glorifying the Lord of the experience.
It was,
the Lord of our worship.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was one of the quotes I heard was, "We tend to worship." So we tend to worship the actual worship set rather than worshiping God, which is like, I think, a mistake that I've definitely fallen into. But I think it's something that I'm much more aware of now, going into different sets now as well. Yeah.
And I think even that you both said simplicity just then. I don't know if you planned that or not, but I think it's certainly like meaningful that the simpleness of worship, and we've kind of seen that in a number of different contexts, that people are hungry for that, whether they've been in church for a while or whether they're like new to faith as well, is people are kind of done with the flash and the lights and the pizzazz where maybe that used to be attractive in the past. They're done with that, and they want the simplicity and just things to get out of the way of God, and just to see God as he really and truly is. And you know what? You get over someone accidentally playing a piano note wrong one time, or you get over like the awkwardness
Joash.
of a transition. I wasn't targeting anyone in particular, but like the Holy Spirit is more than capable enough to paper over that. And actually, you'd really care far less about that when you're about glorifying God and not about glorifying the quality of a music set. So I love that, and I love that you both shared that. And I think that that's a word for any of us who lead worship, or any of us who experience worship or worship God, as it's not about what we think it's about. It's about simplicity, and it's about the Lord, and it's okay if it's awkward. Everything that you want is on the other side of awkward. Everything awesome's just on the other side of awkward as well. I feel like that's lined up a few times. So, guys, would you do it again?
Yeah, if that's what God was calling us to.
If God says.
Correct answer.
No, well, genuinely though, like, absolutely, I'd do it again. But also, like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It could be something similar. Could be something completely different. Could be the exact same thing. But, like, I think I'm definitely even more so now open to hearing what God wants. Especially, like, for us as a community at Crossway Youth, I think during the 24-hour we saw like hungry people. Yeah. We saw hunger. And I think that, God has so much more. Like that was just the beginning of something. I don't see that in any way as like the finish line.
100%.
I think that was the start. So whatever God calls us to, whether it's another 24-hour worship, absolutely.
Yeah, not to copy and paste your answer, but exact same thing.
Come on, mate.
But what he
Bit of
said,
a
yeah.
What he said. No, really. Yeah, if God really, I think just waiting on God and seeing if this is something God wants us to do again, then we're all for it. But also making sure that it's because I think I've already heard a bit of a buzz of like, oh, when are we gonna do it again? We need to do it again. And I think it'd be cool if someone plans that. If God plans on someone else's heart, I would love to see that be done. But I think at the moment, just patient on what God is calling me as an individual to do. And if 24-hour comes up again, maybe it's time. Run it back.
Run it back.
Run it back.
Run it back. Yeah, I love that picture that you both painted. It was actually about obedience. It wasn't about an event. It wasn't about running a big long worship set. That just happened to be a step of obedience for both of you.
Yeah.
And that's really the takeaway here is you're different because you took a step of obedience to respond to God and said yes to him. And if it's another step of obedience to do it again, if God says 48 hours and you really both feel like it is,
Let's do it.
say less God.
Just do a week.
But also, a step of obedience could have looked totally different.
Hold up. When's uni break?
But a step of obedience could have looked different. And could look different for you if you're listening as well. It might not be 24 hours of worship. It might be to speak to that person in your school or to have that faith conversation at home or at the dinner table, whatever it looks like. It's about obedience.
I also would add, I think I think one thing we also didn't really mention as well, that there's actually been a lot of these situations that happen across the year where God sort of put something either on my heart or Kia's heart, and it starts with small things. I think one of them I remember was changing a training night.
Yeah, that's right.
For youth into a spiritual night. So if for more context, for our youth band, we have once a month we have either practical, a social, or a spiritual night. And so we already had our spiritual night at the start of the year, and then so it was time for our practical one, and then a week before?
Yeah.
The week of, yeah.
Oh, the week of, technically, yeah, of the practical night. I sort of felt in my heart maybe it should be a spiritual night. And I think I shared it to you first, and then it sort of just became a spiritual night, and God really moved incredibly in that space. So I think once you're obedient with the smaller things, it gets a lot easier. I would say
they snowball, don't they?
Yeah, I think a big way that Joash and I, and I'm sure it's the case for many other people, the way that you kind of know that it's a God thing is if somebody else kind of this is just one of the ways. I'm sure there's many ways, but I think. For me personally, if I think that something's from God, I talk to Joash about it because generally he'll have a similar idea, and I'm like, okay, well, there we go.
Yeah.
Do you
want to get Macca's? Yeah, I'll see.
Oh, I have to now.
I was actually thinking KFC, so.
Must be God then. We should have salad.
If it was, yeah. Guys, thanks for this chat. It was really good, and I really believe that people will have been encouraged to, particularly around obedience and simplicity. I think those are two really key takeaway themes around simplicity of worship and also then what it means to be obedient to God in the big things, but also in the small daily snowballing into each other things. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Right, Lachie, thanks for listening to another episode of the CY Pod.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to us, if there's a chat wherever you're watching, chuck it down there. Otherwise, the CY Pod on Instagram. Reach out if you want us to do anything. I don't know. Review.
Clean your house.
Review. Okay, not quite that.
I hear Joash cooks 2-minute noodles quite well.
Yeah, true. If you need me to cook some 2-minute noodles.
I was just going to say, if you want us to review your meal prep or something, then we can do that. Or if you got any questions about what we do.
We've actually turned into a gym podcast. So send in your meal prep and your protein shake.
Here I am trying to do a nice outro. And you're hijacking this completely. Yeah, reach out to us for gym meal suggestions. I don't know.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next episode.
See ya.
See ya.